my channel. So today I'm back with another Unsolved Mysteries video and I'm super excited because I love these. If you don't know what my Unsolved Mysteries series is, it's basically a series I do where I look into unsolved mysteries. I literally just go on Google or whatever and I find a creepy unsolved mystery, whether it be like paranormal or some kind of murder or something like that, that hasn't been solved and can't be explained. And I read through it, I talk about it, I share my opinions. It gets interesting and I basically just love creepy stories, so we may as well, you know. If you haven't seen the last episodes, I will have a link to the playlist in the description below, so if you'd like to go and watch those, you can. They were great. In this Unsolved Mysteries video, I was on Google today looking up some unsolved mysteries and one kept continuously popping up and it was the mystery of the Sodder children. Apparently these children died in a house fire, yet their deaths can't be explained. So I'm going to go into this, I'm going to read about it. I've already read some, but I haven't got to the end of the story yet, so I don't know. Apparently it's been 60 years and nobody has solved this mystery yet. Nobody knows how the children died. I'm going to get into it. I'm super excited because it seems really creepy. So let's just go. I've got my glasses on because I can't blind. Also, if I'm looking over here, it's because I'm reading the story, just in case you're like, wow, rude, she's like not even looking at the camera. I'm not sure how you pronounce the area of this. Fayetteville? Something like that. It's in, where is it? West Virginia? Fayetteville? I'm going to call it the area. Because I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it wrong through the whole video and somebody's like, wrong. For decades, anyone driving down Route 16 near Fayetteville, West Virginia could see a billboard bearing the grainy images of 5 children, all dark-haired and solemn-eyed. Their names and ages: Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5. Stenciled beneath, along with speculation about what happened to them. The area was and is a small town with a main street that doesn't run longer than 100 yards, and rumours always played a larger role in the case than evidence. No one even agreed on whether the children were dead or alive. Everyone knew for certain was, on the night before Christmas 1945, George and Jenny Sodder and 9 of their 10 children went to sleep. One son was away in the army. So they've got 10 children, holy smokes. Around 1 AM, a fire broke out. So George and Jenny are the parents. George and Jenny and 4 of the children escaped, but the other 5 were never seen again. George had tried to save them, breaking a window to re-enter the house, slicing a swath of skin from his arm. He could see nothing through the smoke and fire which had swept through all of the downstairs rooms, living and dining room, kitchen, office, and his and Jenny's bedroom. He took frantic stock of what he knew. 2-year-old Sylvia, whose crib was in the bedroom, was safe outside, as was 17-year-old Marion and 2 sons, 23-year-old John and 16-year-old George Jr., who'd fled the upstairs bedroom they shared. He figured that the other children and Betty is also the other child, what? Still had to be up there, cowering in 2 bedrooms on either end of the hallway, separated by a staircase that was now engulfed in flames. He raced back outside, hoping to reach them through the upstairs window, but the ladder he always kept propped against the house was strangely missing. So someone's taken his ladder, that's weird. An idea struck. He'd drive one of his 2 coal trucks up to the house and climb atop it to reach the windows. But even though they functioned Even though they'd functioned perfectly the day before, neither would start now. He tried to scoop water from a rain barrel but found it frozen solid. What does that have to do with anything? Oh, to put out the fire? No. His daughter Marion sprinted to a neighbour's home to call the fire department but couldn't get any operator response. A neighbour who saw the blaze made a call from a nearby tavern, but again no operator responded. Exasperated, the neighbour drove into town and tracked down Fire Chief F.J. Morris, who who initiated the area's version of a fire alarm, a phone tree system whereby one firefighter phoned another who phoned another. The fire department was only 2.5 miles away, but the crew didn't arrive until 8 a.m, by which point the Sodders' home had been reduced to a smoking pile of ash. Okay, what's going on with the firefighters in this Fayetteville? If you phone the fire department, it shouldn't take like 7 hours or whatever to get to them, should it? What are they doing? They assumed that 5 of their children were dead, but a brief search of the grounds on Christmas Day turned up no trace of remains. Chief Morris suggested that the blaze had been hot enough to completely cremate the bodies, strangely enough, and cremate the bones at the same time. A state police inspector combed the rubble and attributed the fire to faulty wiring. George covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt, intending to preserve the site as a memorial. But the Sodders had begun to wonder if their children were still alive. The dad, like George, had some beef with some Italian man to do with his business or something. So there's that. That might come in handy. Sodders planted flowers across the space where their house had stood and began to stitch together a series of odd moments leading up to the fire. There was a stranger who appeared at the home a few months earlier, back in the autumn, or fall if you're American, asking about hauling work. Someone's calling me. Hello? I don't have life insurance. I'm 16 years of age. Moved to the back of the house, pointed to 2 separate fuse boxes and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." Strange, George thought, especially since he'd just had the wiring checked by the local power company, which pronounced it in fine condition. So this fire the police said it was caused by faulty wiring. However, George had just had the wiring and fuse boxes checked, and apparently they were fine, so what? Around the same time, another man tried to sell the family life insurance. Oh my god, I just had a call about life insurance! Oh my life! And became irate when George declined. "Your goddamn house is going to go up in smoke," he warned, "and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to be paid for the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini." George was indeed outspoken about his dislike for the Italian dictator, occasionally engaging in heated arguments with other members of the area's Italian community, and at the time didn't take the man's threats seriously. The older Sodder sons also recalled something peculiar. Just before Christmas, they noticed a man parked along US Highway 21, intently watching the younger kids as they came home from school. Around 12:30 Christmas morning, after the children had opened a few presents and everyone had gone to sleep, the phone rang and Jenny rushed to answer it. An unfamiliar female voice asked for an unfamiliar name. There was laughter and glasses clinking in the background. Jenny said, "You have the wrong number," and hung up. She went back to bed, but then noticed all of the downstairs lights were still on and the curtains open. The front door was also unlocked. She saw Marianne asleep on the sofa in the living room and assumed that the other kids were upstairs in bed. She turned out the lights, closed the curtains, locked the door and returned to her room. She'd just begun to go to sleep when she heard one sharp, loud bang on the roof, then a rolling noise. An hour later, she was roused once again, this time by heavy smoke curling into the room. Jenny couldn't understand how 5 children could perish in a fire and leave no bones, no flesh, nothing. She conducted a private experiment, burning animal bones, chicken bones, beef joints, pork chop bones, to see if the fire consumed them. Each time she's left with a heap of charred bones. Yeah, it's weird how, there was absolutely no evidence of the children being left, you know? She knew that remnants of various household appliances had been found in the burned out basement as still identifiable. An employee at the crematorium informed her that bones remain after bodies are burned for 2 hours at 2,000 degrees. Their house was destroyed in 45 minutes. So if it takes 2 hours in 2,000 degrees to burn bones and the house was destroyed in 45 minutes, you would think there would still be bones of the children left. The collection of odd moments grew. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that their lines had appeared to have been cut, not burned. They realised that if the fire had been electrical, the result of faulty wiring, as the official reports had stated, then the power would have been dead, so how to explain the lighted downstairs rooms? Yeah, because it was about an hour. Did it say it was an hour after Jenny had turned off the lights. So someone must have cut the wires in that time that she turned off the lights and went to bed. So someone, I guess, must have been watching them, right? A witness came forward claiming he saw a man at the fire scene taking a block and tackle used for removing car engines. Could he be the reason George's trucks refused to start? One day, while the family was visiting the site, Sylvia found a hard rubber object in the yard. Jenny recalled hearing the hard thud on the roof, the rolling sound. George concluded it was a napalm pineapple bomb of the type used in warfare. Then came the reports of sightings. A woman claimed to have seen the missing children peering from a passing car while the fire was in progress. A woman operating a tourist shop between Fayetteville and Charleston, some 50 miles west, said she saw the children the morning after the fire. "I served them breakfast," she told the police. There was a car with a Florida license plate and the tourist court too, at the tourist court. Okay, so some people saw the kids in a car going past when the fire was happening, and then this other woman saw them serve them breakfast the morning after. So somebody took the kids out before the fire. So if somebody cut the electricity wires, could they have snuck in, taken the 5 kids, cut the electricity, taken the engine out of the truck and left? A woman at the Charleston Hotel saw the children's photos in a newspaper and said she'd seen 4 of the 5 a week after the fire. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction, she said in a statement. "I do not remember the exact date, however, the entire party did register at the hotel and stayed in a large room with several beds. They registered at about midnight. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to the children. One of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately the whole party stopped talking to me. I sensed that I was being frozen out, and so I said nothing more. They left early the next morning." So this beef that George has with this Italian dictator or whatever, have they taken his kids now? The agents said they would assist if they could get permission from the local authorities, but the area's police and fire departments declined the offer. Next, the Sodders turned to a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley, who discovered that the insurance salesman who'd threatened George was a member of the coroner's jury that deemed the fire accidental. He also heard a curious story from the area's minister about F.J. Morris, the fire chief. Although Morris had claimed no remains were found, he supposedly confided that he discovered a heart in the ashes. He hid it inside a dynamite box and buried it at the scene. Why does everybody kind of not want the Sodders to know that? This is weird, you know? They persuaded Morris to show them the spot. Together they dug up the box and took it straight to the local funeral director. My mum's a funeral director. Who poked and prodded the heart and concluded it was beef liver untouched by the fire. Soon afterward, the Sodders heard rumours that the fire chief had told others the contents of the box had not been found in the fire at all, that he'd buried the beef liver in the rubble in hope that finding any remains would distract the family enough to stop the investigation. So he bought a random beef liver, buried it in a box to try and distract the family enough to stop the investigation? What? This is so weird! Over the next few years, the tips and leads continued to come. George saw a newspaper photo of school children in New York City and was convinced that one of them was his daughter Betty, who drove to Manhattan in search of the child, but her parents refused to speak to him. In August 1949, the Sodders decided to mount a new search at the fire scene and brought in a Washington, D.C. pathologist named Oscar. The excavation was thorough, uncovering several small objects, damaged coins, a partly burned dictionary, and several shards of vertebrae. The pathologist sent the bones to the Smithsonian Institution, which issued the following report. The human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17. The top limit of age should be about 22, since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal maturation than one would expect for a 14-year-old boy, the oldest missing Sodder child. It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a 14 and a half years old to show 16 to 17 maturation. The vertebrae showed no evidence that they had been exposed to the fire. The report said it's very strange that no other bones were found in the evacuation of the basement of the house. It said that one would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children rather than only 4 vertebrae. The bones, the report concluded, were most likely in the supply of dirt George used to fill in the basement to create the memorial for his children. This is so weird, isn't it? State Police Superintendent told the Sodders their search was hopeless and declared the case closed. Undeterred, George and Jenny erected the billboard along Route 16 and passed out flyers offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of their children. They soon increased the amount to $10,000. A letter arrived from a woman in St. Louis saying the oldest girl, Martha, was in a convent there. Another tip came from Texas, where a patron in a bar overheard an incriminating conversation about a long ago Christmas Eve fire in West Virginia. Someone in Florida claimed the children were staying with a distant relative of Jenny's. George travelled the country to investigate each lead, always returning home without any answers. More than 20 years after the fire, Jenny went to get the mail and found an envelope addressed to her. It was postmarked in Kentucky but had no return address. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-20s. She and George couldn't deny the resemblance to their son Louis, who was 9 at the time of the fire. Beyond the obvious similarities, dark curly hair, dark brown eyes, they had the same straight, strong nose, the same upward tilt of the left eyebrow. Once again, they hired a private detective and sent him to Kentucky. They never heard from him again. George died a year later in 1968, still hoping for a break in the cause. Jenny erected a fence around her property and began adding rooms to her home, building layer after layer between her and the outside. The billboard eventually did come down. Her children and grandchildren continued the investigation and came up with theories of their own. The local mafia had tried to recruit him and he declined. They tried to extort money from him and he refused. The children were kidnapped by someone they knew. Someone who burst into the unlocked front door, told them about the fire and offered to take them someplace safe. They might not have survived the night. If they had, and if they lived for decades, if it really was Louis in that photograph, they failed to contact their parents only because they wanted to protect them. The youngest and last surviving Sodder child, Sylvia, is now 69 and doesn't believe her siblings perished in the fire. When time permits, she visits crime-sleuthing websites and engages with people still interested in her family's mystery. Her very first memories are of that night in 1945 when she was 2 years old. She'll never forget the sight of her father bleeding or the terrible symphony of everyone's screams, and she's no closer now to understanding why. So the youngest child is still trying to talk to people who are interested in her family's case and to try and solve it. The most reasonable explanation would be that somebody took the children just before the fire and, like the article said that they would take the children somewhere safe and they just went along with it. It's weird that this picture of supposedly their son showed up, but they went to Kentucky and nothing was found still. You know, George went all over the country and still came back with nothing every time. So it seemed to me like people were trying to hide something, like the chief and everything like that. It seemed like people were just trying to hide something. And it's also weird how the fire department didn't do anything for like 6 or 7 hours. Like the fire happened at 1 AM and they didn't get there till like 8 AM. So what were they doing? Like, why did they leave it that long before they went to the scene, by which point the house had already crumbled into ashes? I guess the chief looked suspicious since he bought that beef liver or whatever and used it to try and distract the family to a point there where they would close the case. But I guess you could look at it a different way and say, well, he was probably sick of them going on and on about it, so he just wanted them to leave it alone. I think this whole thing is super weird. So, give me your theories in the comments. I have like nothing to say. This is so weird. Like, I have no explanation. Like, just what? If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up so that I know you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel as well if you're new here.